to this episode of Ask the Betrayed. I'm Sharon.
And I'm Rae.
And we are so glad to be here. I'm going to just take a little minute to say thank you so much for all of you that are watching or listening to our podcast. It means the world to us, and we hope that we are being helpful. That's the number one reason why we're doing this, is to get more information we think is supremely helpful out in the world. So the title is pretty juicy, right? Death to the marriage. And in all the years that we've been working in relational recovery, we find that the unfaithful falling into this trap is what we feel stops recovery in its tracks. And this is about relational recovery. Obviously, sobriety is the number one reason, right? If you can't stay sober, then your wife or your husband can't stay with you. But this is the number one relational trap that we feel stops recovery in its tracks. The first thing is blaming the betrayed for forcing them to act out. If only you had been a better husband, a better wife, if you'd been thinner, if you'd been more sexual, if you'd been whatever it is, right? That stops relational recovery in its tracks, because the unfaithful is not holding themselves accountable for the behavior that you had nothing to do with. How often do the betrayed come to you and say, it really is my fault, or I caused this?
All the time. And that didn't come from nowhere. There might be some external voices or influences that plant or cultivate those thoughts and emotions, experiences within betrayed partners, but that's not where it originates. That's not where it hooks. That's not where it has the most grip, the most traction, the most angst. It's from within your relational construct, from your partner, the other person who's down in that trench with you, ground zero.
I think about some of the things that my sweet James threw out at me when I discovered what was happening. And one of them was, you were so controlling, you wouldn't let me be me. And it was a lie. It was just a flat out lie that he told himself, and he told all of the people that were surrounding him, so that he could feel justified in acting out. Now, my husband was a sex addict long before he met me. So guess what? That doesn't hold true. There's no logic in that.
Right.
It was an excuse. Yeah. And he had to break through those thoughts in order to be able to see me clearly, so that he could hold himself accountable for his behaviors. The other one was, you were too fat.
Ouch.
I wanted something different. I wasn't fat then, and it didn't matter. It wasn't about that. But boy, does that hit home for any betrayed, that it is a physical attribute of yours that pushed them away. So if you are unfaithful and you are watching this and those two things have come out of your mouth, stop it. Because you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
The fact that you acted outside of your commitments and your own value system has nothing to do with the betrayed.
Right. So why do you think it is such an appealing pitfall that unfaithful partners stumble into or fall into or simmer in?
It challenges their self-concept.
Hmm.
The fact that they did what they did. Most of us walk around in the world thinking that we're good people.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that because they did what they did, they are no longer good people. So they must pull in reinforcement to up their self-esteem.
Yeah. Now, can I pause here for a second? Because I had this conversation with a client just yesterday when we talk about this idea that her unfaithful husband acted outside of her value system. She stopped me there and she said, that's not true. He and his value system never prioritized fidelity, never prioritized love and commitment and integrity. His value system always allowed him to mess around and rationalize and never intended to be faithful from the very, very beginning. So we had to deconstruct that a little bit back to the difference between his highest self,
right,
and his survival adaptive self. That part of him who she, my client, was able to say as early as 7 at the oldest, and probably much earlier than that, had lost that true sense of self, his best self, his highest self, the self that now holds different values and a different value system.
Mm-hmm. So I might mess around in that just a little bit and say it in different words. When we are working with the unfaithful, one of the things we do is we look at the negative core beliefs that came out of childhood for them. I'm not worthy. I don't belong. I'm unlovable. I don't matter. And we identify those in our very special mystery way. And then we look at how those negative core beliefs turned into trauma drivers, turned into wounds that had them acting from that wound, acting outside of their true higher self values in order to soothe the wounds from those core negative beliefs. Then we look at where that shows up in your relationship, intimate and sexual betrayal, taking your marital energy and putting it outside of the marriage. That leads us to see how those core values make you see the world, how those wounds have you interacting in the world, not just with your behavior, but with your thoughts and your perceptions and your beliefs. So the second one is resenting the reaction to the betrayal.
Right.
Like, look how crazy you are. No wonder I did that.
Right. Why are you so angry all of the time?
Who could live with you?
Mm-hmm.
We often say to our partners, think strategically. Think about how you want to be in this moment, because you do not want to give the unfaithful any evidence that they can use against you, because it distracts them from what really is happening. What really is happening is that you have taken this person that you are supposed to love, you have betrayed them in such a way that no longer do they trust you, but they don't trust the relationship, they don't trust their past, and they don't trust themselves. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand that, then find someone who has been specifically trained in betrayal, trauma, therapy, or coaching so that they can help you understand the extent of what has happened to your supposed beloved.
Because otherwise, it's a trap. It's a sticky trap, and it's a defeating trap.
It is.
We talked a few weeks ago about the idea of being stuck. I think that's one of the places that stickiness occurs most often.
Yes, I do too. That impatience that we see in the unfaithful about the recovery journey for the betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it is really hard to hear from the professionals that it takes as long as it takes. James and I did an internal study trying to answer the question, how long does it take for a betrayed partner to be able to recover? And so we're a small outfit, right? So the number of people we studied is only 64, but we didn't come up with a specific time range. We couldn't. We didn't come to a definitive answer. But what we did come to is this understanding of how the attachment from the betrayed to the unfaithful changes. And it changes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are the unfaithful, buckle up, because in one moment, your betrayed can be understanding, empathetic, forgiving even, and the next minute, mad as a wet hen.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just part of the process.
All of which falls under the umbrella of being authentic and living within that sort and that style of individual integrity and authenticity.
I've talked a little bit about how I really lost my hat. And the trauma forced me outside of my own personal values for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just part of it. Mm-hmm. Until you can find your own internal safety as a betrayed, your emotions, your reactions are volatile. Mm-hmm. They're unpredictable. And that just drives that trauma even deeper. Mm-hmm. Right? That has us feeling the trauma in a different way. Like we're having to react to ourselves and to the unfaithful and what has happened in our marriage or in our relationship.
Right, right. And that pain of that sense of self-abandonment is, I think you're right, one of the most excruciating parts. It can also be one of the most provocative, meaning it can be one of the things that gets our attention in a way that empowers us to make change really close to home, meaning inside ourselves versus externally outside of ourselves.
We just finished an intensive yesterday with an unfaithful husband, and he was still holding on to blame and resentment. Mm-hmm. Not only for the way he felt like his wife treated him, but also because of her reactions. It was heartbreaking to hear. I was nurturing and holding him accountable at the same time. So straight shooting.
For anyone who hasn't had the pleasure of working with you, that is how you work. You have a magical gift for tough love.
Thank you. I've had to practice it a lot. You are so right that acting outside of our own values is so provocative. I'm not sure that James and I would have made it had I not been able to get out of my own trap of acting outside of my values. I had to make a decision at some point that I was going to be me. Mm-hmm. And that I couldn't live from the wounds that had been created. Because I wasn't myself with him, but I wasn't myself with anyone. I already said, which was my third point, losing patience for the betrayed's journey. James has done a video showing graphs of that study that we did about the betrayed's attachment. It will be on our YouTube channel, Core Relationship Recovery. It is so interesting. He's a CSAT and an ABSAT supervisor, and it is one of the groups that those two organizational learners ask for from him is, can you do a group on this to help teach us?
Yes.
It's really important. I think that before, therapists got really fatigued, coaches got really fatigued with that changing attachment.
Yes.
And they would get confused and they would blame the partner.
Yes.
And so it's really valuable information.
Sharon, I have a question. Before we move off from this topic of impatience, I'm wondering if we can share a little bit about some of the subtle ways that comes across, because sometimes it's really overt. Would you hurry up and get over it already? But more often it's not that explicit and that overt. So how are some of the subtle ways or the more covert ways that we hear that come through toward betrayed partners?
So if we hear the unfaithful saying things like, she never wants to be with me, I can't have a conversation with him about XYZ. I don't know why I married her in the first place. I think that shows such impatience. If you are betrayed and you feel as if the understanding that you had in the beginning is now gone, vacant, that's a really good indicator that you're getting impatience on the other end. When the unfaithful loses their patience with you in the way that they treat you. So showing impatience and irritability about things, day-to-day things, little things like, I didn't like how you made that chicken stew. Mm-hmm. There's that possibility of them being impatient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the eye rolls, it's the heavy sighs, it's the expectation of compassion when they come home after going to a meeting after work versus just coming straight home after work and getting to relax in front of the television. It's that critique of the quality of what has consumed the relationship. I hear it come through as, is this what we are now? Is this our life now?
Is this going to be our life forever?
Right, exactly. Where do we get to have any fun? Again, not that there aren't kernels of truth to that, which I think is part of the reason why it is as sticky and gets as much traction as it does. But there are manipulative and blamey undertones and concepts involved there that are really, really dangerous.
Where do you think in recovery for the unfaithful they lose their patience the most?
Where do you think they lose their patience the most?
So I don't think that it is in the first phase of safety and stability, but I think it is in that grief and mourning. Grief and mourning comes later in recovery for the unfaithful than it does for the betrayed. The betrayed goes into grief immediately, starts mourning what he or she thought they knew immediately. That post-traumatic growth period, if the betrayed isn't achieving that fast enough,
right,
we really see that. I'm going to say that the majority of the couples that we see are vacillating between the grief and mourning and the post-traumatic growth piece, with some not very stable and safe things that point to that loss of patience. And so the majority of the couples intensives that James and I do are around, hey, you're not seeing this. You're not seeing how you are treating your partner. And let's unpack this. So the next one is being surrounded by yes people who do not hold you accountable, but only support you.
Okay, talk more about that.
So let's say that the unfaithful is going to some type of support group and they have chosen peers or only have listening for the people who are holding the betrayed in contempt. I remember so vividly a couples intensive that we did, and the guy, the very first day, and it was an unfaithful man and a betrayed woman, he said to her, all of the men in my group think you're crazy. Mm-hmm. He did not have the right people surrounding him.
Right.
When we delved deeper, we realized he only told part of the story because he wanted sympathy, because he wanted support. But that's not going to get you better, buddy.
Right. Right.
What's going to get you better is to have people around you who are going to hold you accountable, who are going to call you out when you are only looking at something from one side.
Can I just say that's one of my favorite parts of facilitating the groups that we do for unfaithful partners, is because they do that for each other. They make our jobs easy when they step in and speak to each other from that language of peers and from that language of developing relationships over periods of time where they have learned to watch, albeit secondhand, as these partners ferociously fight to stay engaged in their relational recovery. And so at those moments when the unfaithful partner loses sight of that again, those other people in their life are able to speak up and say, that's not consistent with what your partner has shown to be true. That isn't representative of what this is all about.
Mm-hmm. One of our favorite questions to clarify that is this the way your partner always was? Mm-hmm. Or did this just start after discovery? But the guys really do make it easy. We rarely have to call someone on the carpet because they do such a beautiful job of it with each other. And I love how they rely on each other outside of group. And that is something that must be part of the recovery. We all get into situations where we don't know which end is up, whether we're betrayed or unfaithful. And to be able to reach out by text to a group of folks who are recovering with you and say, hey, does anybody have a minute? I need to talk through something. Mm-hmm. This is what happened. Any suggestions? I think that that's one of the secret sauces in the success of the people that we work with.
I agree. I agree. And learning to ask, whether it's a peer or whether it's one of us asking the question, is this your addiction speaking? Mm-hmm. Is this your dysfunction speaking? Is mm-hmm. this your entitlement or your blame shifting or your resentment speaking? Or mm-hmm. is this your healing? Is this your recovery? Is this your highest and better self? Mm-hmm. And the other question I love asking is, what do you not want to tell us about the situation? Mm-hmm. Sometimes mm-hmm. I get some crickets back, but usually it invites them to go a little bit deeper and mm-hmm. say, okay, what might I be even unconsciously or subconsciously holding back from mm-hmm. sharing about the circumstances?
Mm-hmm. My favorite question is, what was she really saying? What was he really saying? You might hear, I hate you, but what are they really saying? Mm-hmm. I can't trust you.
Yeah.
I'm confused by you. I'm hurt by you.
Yeah.
And to teach unfaithful men and women to be able to add to what they're hearing. What are the values of the person that you are in relationship with? Mm-hmm. Are they outside of their values? And why? Mm-hmm. Why is that happening?
I don't know about you. I find that our betrayed partners think they have a lot more information and a lot more answers about why their partners are doing something than their partners have, right? So sometimes when we're working with those betrayed partners, we get to invite them to push pause on projecting their solutions, their assumptions, their conclusions about what's going on, and say, let him take this to his guys. Let him take this to his therapist. Let her take this to her coach. But really allow that person to take responsibility for working that why out themselves and figuring out how to repair that within the relationship.
I'm going to say that was probably the hardest thing I had to learn how to do, because I did know.
I can see that.
And I may not have known all the time, but my answers for James were filtered through my pain, my perceptions about life, my values, and my abilities that he might not have had at that time. So one of the things I started saying is, just because you can doesn't mean he can. Mm-hmm. And you think, well, how's that going to help? But it reminded me, just because I can talk about my feelings doesn't mean he can yet. Just because I can see what's underneath this layer of what he's doing doesn't mean he can yet. And if I push him too fast, it could all unwind for him. Maybe his ego is not strong enough to do that yet. Maybe he doesn't know how to give himself enough self-compassion to tackle that. So that was a hard one for me to learn.
And I might also toss into that mix, maybe they've been using you as a crutch. Mm-hmm. Maybe that reliance upon your insights, your perspective, your experience, your understanding is blocking inadvertently or removing an opportunity for him or her to really dig deep and do that work on their own.
So important. Absolutely so important. Get out of the way so that they can rise. Yep. It's physics. Okay. The unfaithful, relying on how they feel to guide their actions instead of what they're learning in recovery. So that's kind of needs versus wants, but it also circles back to that family of origin work that we feel is so important, because you can be very, very sensitive to a tone, a voice, a way of speaking that can make you feel as if you're being abused
or attacked
or threatened or blamed. Yes. And the reality of it is, you're in that swampy soup of a wound. Mm-hmm. So stick to the facts, Jack. What's really happening here? To learn to be able to soothe yourself. To learn to be able to hop inside and look and go, oh, I feel like I'm 4. Let me think about that. Oh, I remember what happened when I was 4. And that created this core negative belief that became something that I really thought about myself. And this is how it's been pointed out to me that I have reacted from that wound my whole life. And I'm doing it again. Mm-hmm. That is hard work.
Yeah.
Especially if the unfaithful was brought up in very emotionally dismissive families. Feelings are not welcome here. Right. That neglect that we put under the heading of emotional neglect. The way that parents were uninformed, unaware of the need to say, oh, it looks like you're angry. Mm-hmm. And teach children about their feelings and to be there to support them when their feelings became overwhelming. The situation was too much for them to handle by themselves. But if the parents were too busy handling their own things, or they didn't realize that if they just kept moving, they were leaving you behind.
Right. This came up recently in a conversation with some of my colleagues where we have a lot of discourse right now within the recovery world about how valuable it is for an unfaithful partner to learn how to be present, to learn how to show up, to learn how to hold space for his betrayed partner or her betrayed partner. And what we find in that situation is there can be kind of a kickback effect where the unfaithful partners are saying, oh, I'm not able to do that. They're scared of doing harm and they're not yet fully skilled at how to do it well. And so they're kind of freezing and pulling back altogether, which has the, I think, inadvertent but equally harmful impact on the betrayed partner because those needs still aren't getting met. There isn't that exchange of connection and presence between those two partners. And so one of the things that we as a group of colleagues were talking about is how important it is to make it clear that the goal is to expand that capacity. We can't stay in that space of, oh, this is hard, this is uncomfortable, I don't know how to do this, I'm not within my window of tolerance, whatever languaging we want to put around it, and stay there. We need to see that for what it is and find out where and when and how to grow that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've never met a partner who didn't give credit for someone trying their best to be present.
But would you know that from listening to the unfaithful partners?
No, because they have this idea that their partner needs perfection.
I hear it almost every single day, and it breaks my heart.
Us too.
Because I also see on the other half of the relationship just how high it costs and just how hard that partner is working to stay in the game.
Mm-hmm. So I will say that because we didn't have the kind of help that is available now, James was very slow to learn how to be present because he'd spent his whole life not being present. That was a survival skill. And so the betrayed needs to understand that they're coming up against a survival skill, something that made the unfaithful feel okay by not being present for what was happening in their body, not what was happening in their families, not what was happening in the relationship. That doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable for that. I know this is hard. I see you trying. Had I not seen him trying, we would not have made it because there were many years of trying because of the lack of appropriate help.
Right.
That kind of is like believing, well, this is who I am, and my betrayed should love me as I am. Your parents should have loved you for who you are. And because they weren't taught how to love a whole child, that was missing in your upbringing, especially for those of us who are 55 and up. We use the Myers-Briggs testing when people come to us for work. And the thinker people are the most common abusers of the idea, this is who I am. Well, you are who you are because you didn't have a choice. We all have a beautiful feeling function when we're born, whether it's nurtured and grown or stomped out. The idea of that type of testing is that you don't want to be 85% thinking and whatever's left for feeling. Your job is to try to balance it. It's just like in education. If you have a really profoundly visual learner, as an educator, you want to teach them to be able to be an auditory learner as well, an experiential learner as well. Otherwise, they're going to walk through life cockeyed. Mm-hmm. And the same for this. So you can't believe your own BS.
This is reminding me, one of the narratives that I needed to sort through at the end of my marriage was that my ex-husband said, I gave you my best and that wasn't good enough for you. And to my credit, I'm grateful that I didn't immediately join that incrimination, nor did I immediately reject it. I gave myself time to really think through and feel through what conclusive truth I could land on about that. And the truth that I ultimately landed on was his best was good enough for me. His worst wasn't. And there were stages during our life and relationship when he gave me his best. He gave us his best. He gave recovery his best. He gave himself his best. That best was always good enough for me. We didn't survive his worst.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so important. The last one I think I want to talk about is not seeing how hard the betrayed is working to save the relationship. We hear a lot, oh, she is such a nag. He is up in my business all the time. She keeps telling me what to do. All of that is in an effort to save the relationship. Mm-hmm. We often come back to, can you look at your marriage or your relationship over time? And can you see with a very particular lens all of the ways she poured her heart and soul, or he poured his heart and soul into this relationship, mm-hmm. and you did not participate? We want the betrayed to learn to step out of the way so that the unfaithful can stand up, so that they can find their way with their helpers. But the betrayed has a unique view of what is working and what is not. Because more than likely, the betrayed has been the one that has kept the wheels on the bus. The betrayed is the one that has sacrificed over and over and over again to try to make things right. Mm-hmm. And the unfaithful has got to be able to see that. Mm-hmm. Has got to be able to understand, oh, I wasn't present for that.
Yeah, and I think if the unfaithful partner is able to really embrace and internalize that, it goes a long ways toward inoculating or insulating against that tendency to blame, to resent, to negate their partner.
Okay, now this really is the last one. Oh. The trap of shame. The unfaithful cannot get stuck in shame, mm-hmm. because there is no room for the partner there. There's no room for anybody else. It even makes it hard for coaches and therapists to get to you when you are sitting in that big old pile of manure. The unfaithful's shame can rise, and because it is so hurtful to feel it for them, mm-hmm. because it is excruciatingly painful, they isolate. Mm-hmm. They shut down. They don't believe that recovery is possible. Yep. They relapse.
Yes.
I remember one pivotal moment in mine and James's relationship where he was utterly consumed by shame. It was as if I was looking at a vortex of fire surrounding him. He couldn't speak. He couldn't give me eye contact. He had earphones on for 3 days. It left me feeling abandoned. It made me question if I was asking for something that was fair. It was probably one of the most hurtful times in our recovery. I had made a very pointed statement about how he was recovering and how it wasn't working for me. I'm a straight shooter. I just said it. It was the only time I used these words. If you do not do XYZ, I am leaving in 1 year. He went into such a shame spiral that I didn't think we would recover from it. And then he wrote this piece that we use all the time with our clients, and he chose to step up out of his shame so that we could fight for our marriage again.
Yeah.
It's a sticky, sticky trap. And we see that trap sometimes being the detriment to relationships.
Which I think is one of the reasons you are brave enough and bold enough and, dare I say, ballsy enough to use strong language to call it out, because we care, because we do want to get everybody's attention.
Life's too short. Like, how many people have come to us after 20 years of trying to save their marriage, 32 years of trying to save their marriage? Life is too short.
Yes.
So I think the way we should close this out is to talk a little bit about what betrayed partners can do if they see some of these things happening. One of them, we just sort of gave the example of be brave enough to say something.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose? Do you want to live in misery the rest of your life? See something, say something. That doesn't mean all the time. That doesn't mean be nitpicky. I think about sometimes in our recovery, and I was like a pecking hen, like. But it took me a while to recognize what I made that statement about. It took me a while to recognize, to be able to put into words, this is what's happening. So give yourself some time, use your resources to talk through things. Ask your resources, your helpers, what can I do with this? And speak it. What else do you think?
Well, I remember Sarah, our dear Sarah Morales, always talking about, if you feel confused about something, it's an indication that there may be some layer of manipulation or gaslighting happening within the situation. Confusion is the byproduct of that. So that's when we utilize other resources, whether it's people, trusted people within our support system, whether it's our own inner wisdom that we've captured in journals or other kinds of affirmations and statements. But there's oftentimes that sense of, I feel like I'm not sure what's real anymore, and I need a perspective check. I need to recalibrate and reorient to figure out what's actually going on. And like I said earlier, is this my trauma speaking, or is this coming from my place of healing and inner strength?
Because we so often see betrayed partners who have complex PTSD. I'm going to urge partners to write things down that you notice, because there will be a pattern.
Yes.
And because we forget, you need to write it down, because then you can see, oh, over and over and over again, my unfaithful's being a people pleaser. It is more important for him or her to make everybody else happy but me. Write it down so you can see that pattern, and then check in. Let me tell you what happened. Am I reading this right?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think when we hear those words, everyone in my group says, or but my therapist thinks, those are cues that we get to get curious, get our critical thinking hats on, and not get sucked into immediately believing that that is accurate or applicable, meaning it might be an accurate statement that doesn't match the situation or the circumstances, or it might not be an accurate statement to begin with.
Yes, yes. And to be able to put that critical thinking hat on, you have to acknowledge what you're feeling. So, ow, that hurt. I can't believe you said that. And then say, what else is there? Mm-hmm. Get curious. Slow down and get curious.
And it was really you and James who taught me the importance of not only understanding the factual truth of what's happening, but the emotional truth about it as well. Not just the words that were said, the actions that were taken, the facts, which, as you said, are critically important, but also what is the emotional impact and context surrounding all of that. It's the relational way.
It is. Your relationship will not recover if you do not choose to heal relationally. So we say that in another way to betrayed partners. We find that betrayeds leave the marriage more often if they've tried. Like, there's that initial, you were unfaithful, we're done. But if there was, you were unfaithful, let's work on this. And then they end up saying, yeah, it's not going to work. It is not mostly because of the sexual and intimate betrayal. It is because of the way they are being treated. And that's why relational recovery is a must. Yeah. So we hope that today's been helpful. If you liked this, please give us a thumbs up. Share our podcasts with other people who you know it might benefit. And feel free to email us and comment. We will read absolutely everything that comes across our desk. It may take us a little while to get back to you, and we may not respond, but we will probably add it to the list of what we're talking about. And you'll get your very own topic for a podcast. So keep those comments coming. They're really, really important to us. See you next time.
Bye.